Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's safeguarding briefing. Today is the 16th of June 2020. For lots of people, we are just slowly starting to come out of lockdown. And if you're watching this somewhere in the future and are wondering what on earth I'm talking about, well, we're coming out of a situation where we have been in lockdown for the last almost 12 weeks. And in that time, we've seen an enormous increase in the number of child protection issues which have arisen. I'm Kate Young. I'm the founder and CEO of the Safeguarding Association, and I'm coming to you tonight in relation to my 6-weekly safeguarding briefing. What we're going to cover tonight, we're going to look at what's been going on previously. So we're going to have a bit of a look at some of the issues that have come up during lockdown. We're also going to have, we'll spend a few moments thinking about where we are currently and what are some of the issues facing us right now. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time just thinking about what's coming up in the next 6 to 8 weeks. If you're a safeguarding lead, then these are things that you'll need to be thinking about over the coming weeks and months. So let's begin. Safeguarding leads, I know lots of you have been absolutely inundated for the last 10 to 12 weeks. For you, I'm wholly aware that lockdown has meant a significant increase in workload. It's meant an increase and a complete, for some of you, change in how you operate, how you connect with students, how you've had to liaise with your staff. You've had to get to grips with potentially new technology, to deal with uncertainty in a greater way than you've maybe done previously. And I take my hat off to you. I know lots of you have been absolutely run ragged over the last few weeks in relation to this. And lots of you have carried a really heavy emotional burden for what has been going on for your students at home, particularly for those students where school or college or university or your organisation has been a safe haven for them. Let's have a look at some of the kind of headline issues that have been coming out over the last few weeks. Well, what we've seen is an increase in concerns around county lines and drug dealing. One of the things the police have been saying is that county lines and particularly drug dealing has become really obvious when the rest of the country was holed up and harboured up in their own homes, trying to keep safe from the deadly virus that has been going round. So drug dealing has been a big issue, as well as the issues around county lines. So lots of young people being drawn out of their homes to go and deal, to go and transport contraband across county lines. Particularly in relation to county lines, there has also been the publication of a serious case review, which looks specifically at the issues around county lines. Tragically, yet again, we have another serious case review telling us that we're not sharing information, we're not inquisitive enough, and we're not doing enough. Now, I know lots of you are doing everything you possibly can, but there are areas we need to work on. And yet again, the sharing of information has come up as a very big issue for this particular tragic case. So something to consider. The other area that's been coming up quite a lot has been around the issue of domestic abuse and domestic violence. During lockdown, there has been a change in the guidance and a relaxing of the guidance to allow victims of domestic abuse to flee their homes, to go to a place of safety, a place of safe harbour, without being penalised. That has been welcomed. There's been lots of transport organisations who've been saying, if you are a domestic abuse victim fleeing, then let us know and you will get safe transport. You will get free transport to get you from where you are to where you want to be in order to be safe. So lots of very positive things coming out from society in relation to that. But as safeguarding leads, we'll know that there are lots of children and young people living within households for whom this has become a very real situation, where they don't have a parent who is able to protect them, where they don't have a family member who's able to give them that place of safety. Maybe their place of safety used to be at grandma or granddad's or aunt or uncle's, and they've not been able to go there because of the lockdown situation. There will also be lots of young people who have, for the very first time, come into contact with parents in an acrimonious situation. There will be lots of children in families where the issue of domestic abuse has never, ever arisen. They've never been on your safeguarding radar at all. And now, because of the unique circumstances around the lockdown and the pandemic and families being together in a way that is unprecedented, save for maybe a couple of weeks holiday in the summer and Christmas, they've been in a much bigger hotbed of conflict. And as such, abuse and violence potentially has arisen and occurred within those family homes. So what that means is that for those children who will eventually return to school or eventually start to go back to places of safety, you are likely to see an increase in conversations, in comments, in anecdotal remarks from them or from family members about what life has been like for them. And what we will have to do when we have a safeguarding responsibility is make sure that our ears are open to those conversations, and that we have our staff making sure that their ears are open to it too, and are letting you know about what is going on and what some of their concerns are for their students as they slowly make a return to the classroom. For some secondary students and primary students, they will have gone back, but of course social distancing and the other regulations have made it extremely difficult to have anything like we used to have previously in all of that. So it's a very different landscape. And on top of all of that, teachers are as well anxious about what's happening for them and their families. Huge hotbed, and we'll look at what the impact of that is shortly. In terms of the issue of parental conflict, there was a major drive last year, and I was part of it, to educate those within local authorities as to the implications of parental conflict and some of the action that can be taken in order to protect children where there is really serious parental conflict. If you are worried about a child, if you are concerned, then get in touch with your local authority, pick up the phone, send that email, and let somebody know that you are worried about what's going on and what is happening. If it is parental conflict and you think, oh, they're just having a couple of arguments, still make sure you pick up the phone and give them that phone call, or you send them that email. Because I know certainly in the local authorities where I've been delivering training, where I've been supporting them, each of them has got a specific programme around helping parents with that conflict. Remember, we're in really difficult circumstances at the moment, not just in terms of education, but also economically. We've had a study out today that talks about 600,000 jobs have potentially gone during the 12 weeks that we've had lockdown. That's a significant number of people and a significant shift for lots of families in their financial status, which will undoubtedly have a toll and have an impact on their relationship, not just with their partner, but also with their family and their children. So be aware of that. What else has been going on? Well, for those of you who are on the front line of education, there have been no less than 180 different pieces of government guidance specifically relating to education since lockdown began. That is a phenomenal amount of information to come out of the government departments. It's a huge amount of information to get your head around, and I'm aware that there were something like 16 pieces of government guidance came out on the Friday before the end of half term in May. So as schools were going back in terms of key workers, children, there were about 16 pieces of government guidance that heads and safeguarding needs had to get their head around by the time we got to school on Monday morning. It has not been an easy time for anybody. As one of the pieces of government guidance that is updated annually is keeping children safe in education. Now, many of you will know that there was a big consultation about this particular update. There are lots of significant amendments or proposed amendments to Keeping Children Safe in Education 2020 from Keeping Children Safe in Education 2018, which was when we had the last major update. 2019 simply tweaked the document. That consultation has been paused indefinitely. Now, in terms of what that means for us in safeguarding, it means we're still working to Keeping Children Safe in Education 2018/19. However, given the plethora of government guidance that's come out and the speed with which it has come out, and there's a wealth of legislation that's currently making its way through the Houses of Parliament at the moment, one of which is a domestic abuse bill. I would not at all be surprised if we find that come maybe July, the consultation's reopened, or that we end up in a situation where there is an update hurried out to 2020. And we have to get to grips with that at the back end of August, beginning of September. So my suggestion to you is this: if you haven't seen that consultation, or you haven't seen the draft 2020 Keeping Children Safe in Education, read it, find out what it says, look at what's different, look at what else is being proposed, and then think about what you can do to implement some of those changes that are being proposed. I am slightly concerned that what is going to happen is that we will end up with a lot of those recommended changes happening very quickly, and there being an explanation that we've been in difficult circumstances, we needed to update the guidance, we've done part of a consultation, we're going to carry on. Either that, or it will be paused and we will have the full consultation, and 2020 Keeping Children Safe in Education will be updated later on in the year. Either is possible. But what I urge you to do is read it, consider it, think about what the implications would be for you, for your practice, for your staff, and respond or have responses ready for the consultation, but also be thinking about how on earth you can implement some of these potential changes should they happen quite quickly. It's a lot of twin tracking, a lot of double planning there, I appreciate. However, I think in this particular circumstance, it's sensible to try and be a little prepared for a potentially very hurried change to this very key and substantial guidance. Now, I appreciate that in saying that, that is probably going to throw on a whole host of anxiety on top of what is undoubtedly a really anxious situation for lots of you in any event. I know that lots of you sit on your senior leadership teams or very close there too, and will be working in very difficult circumstances to think about how on earth you can keep the children of your organisation safe. Lots of you who are safeguarding leads in outreach teams or in wider kind of out of school clubs, for want of a better phrase this evening, we'll be thinking about how you can get the children back in, how you're going to sort your funding, how you're going to arrange it. They are all really serious considerations, and I know lots of you are under terrible strain here. What I would urge you to do is make sure that you're recognising the level of stress and anxiety that you're facing, and that you take steps to make some time for yourself. I don't say this to be facetious. I don't say it to teach you to suck eggs. I'm saying it because I think sometimes we often need permission to just take that 1 hour for ourselves to make sure that we're not getting utterly caught up in all of this. It's very, very easy to fall into the trap of doing the do constantly. But we need to make sure that in these really difficult times that we are taking time for ourselves. To coin a mental health first aid training phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup, and your stress bucket needs emptying. So not only will you be anxious, but likely the staff that you're working with are going to be really anxious. The children who are coming in are likely to have some level of anxiety. The parents who are dropping children at the school gates are likely to have some level of anxiety. For the most part, I think the majority of people recognise that this has been a really difficult situation, and that we all still need to do what we need to do to keep safe. But I am aware that there seems to be a growing number of people who are taking the view that enough is enough and we just need to crack on and get on. And that can cause a really difficult situation. I was talking to another group about what we can do and how we can manage this situation. And for me, one of the best ways to deal with this is communication. And I mean communication in a really open and honest way. So if you are introducing children back into your organisation, maybe you're an out of school club, or you're at a school or college or FE or university, and you're starting to think about how do we get people back on site, how do we get people in, what do we do, that you make sure that all levels have really open and honest communication, so that you, if you're liaising with your safeguarding governor, you're having a really honest conversation about what your worries are about what's happening. That you are, as if you're part of the leadership team in communications with parents, you're being really open about what the plans are, what the proposals are, and work with parents around this issue. Being open with your staff about what you're proposing to do, why you're proposing to do that. Yes, there's government guidance. Yes, we have to open the school. Yes, at the moment, we don't know whether the 6 weeks is actually going to happen, or whether the 6 weeks holidays is going to have to be like every other holiday since March, where the schools are open at some level. For key worker staff, don't know. That hasn't yet been fully determined. I know there have been ministerial comments around it, but I'm also noticing how swiftly government ministers are making U-turns and different decisions depending on what is happening closer to the time. So at the moment, that I would say is perhaps not as set in stone as we would like it to be. So there's all of this going on. Communication is really key here with everybody, and it is making sure that everybody understands what is expected of them and what the consequences are if they don't adhere to those particular steps. Doesn't matter what it's in relation to. At the moment, we're talking about a global pandemic. We could be talking about a drugs policy on school. We could be talking about an alcohol policy. We could be talking about an attendance policy, things like that. But what I have really found over the last few weeks when I've been talking to people is those that feel more assured and feel more comfortable in what's happening have got and have had a really open dialogue, an open conversation with those that make decisions and those that support them in their role. They are the ones who've had the more security and the more they feel safer as a result of that. In fact, I was listening to a podcast this morning all about kind of future planning and things like that. And they had a psychologist on who was talking about the need to feel psychologically safe in these particularly uncertain times. And I think that's true for all of us, particularly within a safeguarding setting, that there is an increased level of anxiety. So everything that we can do to help others feel psychologically safe, to say they're not feeling safe, to say that they're worried about somebody, to say that they're worried about a sibling, to say that they're worried about a family, to know that there is that space to go and to have that conversation because they're worried, is possibly the best thing that we can do right now. We don't know what they're going to disclose. We don't know who's going to walk into our organizations with what issues, because we're in an utterly, to use that much coined phrase again, unprecedented situation. In terms of what I predict over the next few months, well, certainly over the next few weeks, we need to be thinking about what our plans are for the 6-week holidays. Again, today we've had a U-turn from government ministers about free school meals. That hasn't quite gone, I think, the way that we thought it was going to, and there's a lot more to fathom out there. There are issues then again around summer holidays, how that's going to operate, what are the requirements, do you still need to be contactable over the summer holidays? Is that different for you? Is that the same for you? Do you need to be wondering about staff on site or having students on site? All of that going on, as well as thinking about what do we need to have in place for September, given we've got a very shifting pattern at the moment. We've got all of these increasing issues going on. Services are getting stretched. We've also seen an 11% drop in referrals to CAFCAS in care proceedings and private law proceedings. My feeling is that as we ease out of lockdown, those numbers are going to spike, and they're going to really hit to the point probably where we hit September, which is the start of the academic year. If we are in any way, shape or form back to some sort of old normality with the education system, then there will be a really serious increase in the number of referrals that will need to be made. So a whole host of things going on there that we'll just need to watch out for and to be aware of, because there will be students walking through your door, like I said earlier, who you will never, ever, ever have had on your radar. But because of the unique circumstances in which we are currently living, they will find themselves victims of potentially some form of abuse, maybe domestic abuse, maybe parental conflict. Maybe they've got a family member who's then got caught up in drug dealing. Maybe you've got family members who are then trying to sell their wares or do something online and not protecting themselves sufficiently because they're desperately trying to help out with the family situation. Never, ever have we had to have as open a mind as we're going to have as we start to see children return to our settings. As ever, if you want to know more, or you want to have a conversation with me to see how I can help you within your organisation with your safeguarding, maybe you just want to have a bounce an idea off, or maybe you want to talk about training, or maybe you're looking at some form of consultancy or supervision, whatever it is, let me know, and please do book a call with me and let's have a conversation about how I can best support you the way that you need that support. Until next time, take care.